it is nice having both, like having the Mac for productivity and the PC
Yeah.
is just like to fuck around, and like there's different development, like different tools
Yeah.
for each one, so it's kind of it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's up. Wait, so how long ago did you get sober?
September of 21.
Okay.
September of 21. Yeah.
And
So,
have you tried to get sober
oh
before?
yeah.
How'd that look like?
Oh yeah. I mean, um, I had a couple of good runs, right? Like when I first tried to get sober, like I was trying to solve I wasn't trying to solve like an internal problem. I had a bunch of external issues, man.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
trying to, not be homeless. I was trying to
Yeah.
put some money in my pocket. I was trying to, get the things in life that I thought were important to me. You know what I mean? I really was.
Yeah.
And and so like I had been introduced to the program, through going like to different detoxes, and there's a lot of resources out there to try to help people that were in the situation I was in. And
Yeah.
eventually, some of them stuck, right? I'd be there for a month or two, maybe three, start to eat more regularly, kind of get some more of the material things together. And then, I just, I'm not the kind of person that can get satisfaction out of just having stuff or
Yeah.
just getting things that, the things that we identify with or like kind of is associated with like success. Those things don't necessarily bring me satisfaction. It's just part of my makeup. I didn't know that at the time,
Right.
but like, so I would get sober, I would get some stuff together, and then, it would just, I felt like hollow, right? Like I remember the first time I bought a car in sobriety,
Yeah.
and like, I remember I was busting my ass, dude. Like I was not cashing checks, right? I was living like eating peanut butter and jellies every day, working 5, 6, 7 days a week if I could overtime to finally just get this car, right? I'm like, this is the thing. This is the one thing I was missing in my life, right? And then I get it, and I just remember feeling like, this is it. It felt like surreal. It was a nice car. It was like better than what, I had some help from my family. It was better than what I could have afforded by myself. And it was an accomplishment in every respect. But what ended up happening, dude, is I just like I remember genuinely feeling like I'm just driving in a coffin. Like this is it. This is the end of the road for me.
Yeah.
In terms of like satisfaction out of life. I really felt that.
Yeah.
And that's like a crazy. I should have been looking to the next thing, or there's a lot of things I guess I should have been doing, but the satisfaction wasn't there. I remember like shortly after that, I ended up meeting some girl outside a liquor store. Don't even know why I was at a liquor store, and take her out for a drink, and then all of a sudden I have a drink. I ended up moving in with her, leaving my sober living, and I relapsed, and I like crashed my car like a week after leaving. So yeah,
So hard.
I know, and just being like, well, that's just how I get down.
Yeah.
That's what I came accustomed to, is building everything up and burning it down. It's just a cycle of my story. So.
Yeah. I love that, bro. Yeah, and like I feel like everybody can relate to that, like alcoholic or not. And I think I've come to that conclusion, and unless I experience otherwise, like I do truly believe that still, that everybody suffers from this lack, from this void, right? And I believe it is like it's a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
Because I believe everybody has a soul, and we got so accustomed to this external satisfaction, and like you said, what we believe is success by obtaining materialistic things, and I've heard it from so many different people that aren't even alcoholics. They have all this stuff, and they're just not happy, right?
Yeah.
And because there's always that next goal. It's always endless, right? Like I want to make this amount of money. For example, I want to make this amount of money this year, and whenever I obtain it, it's like it's still not enough.
Yeah.
So my goal keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it's just whenever I reach it, it's not satisfying.
Well, I feel like we grew up and we have this idea of things that are like it's a dependency on things that are limited. These are finite things, right? There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so much money you could spend. There's only so much you can get out of life if you're just looking at the material world. And it's like it's kind of the way our brains are designed too, right? Like certain things you can only do so much and like get that amount of joy out of, right? Like spending $1,000, if you did that every day, it doesn't feel like $1,000 if you want to measure it in material sense, right? But it's like, I can tell all those times I tried to, stay sober, there wasn't any spiritual solution, right? I thought it was optional. I thought so long as I managed well, right? Like I'm paying my bills, right? I'm getting somewhere in life, so I thought. And so I could just leave the spiritual side of it behind, or I'll get there eventually, right? I didn't understand it to be a contingency on like recovery, on actually recovering, because I was just taking care of the symptoms, right? I didn't get down to the, causes and conditions, right? And so as soon as I did, right, all of a sudden I am now depending on something that's actually like boundless, right? That's like infinite, truly, right? Yeah, there is or he isn't, right? The book talks about it. I think it's sometimes with a lot of spiritual people. It either is there or it's not. There's no in between, right? With whatever your concept is, it's either this like all-reaching thing or it's nothing. And so like, having to actually put some time together now for the first time in my life, right? Like, certain things have just become truth, right? It's not a matter of like, I need to see evidence. It's not like, like there could be. It's not a possibility, right? And that's a complete perspective shift, right? To just, and it happened seamlessly, right? All of a sudden I was being to that state of reason, and I was just like, I'm willing to do anything to not have to be in the position I was in life. And when I took that turn, right, it, like I said, almost without action, right? It just came over me as soon as I expressed like a willingness, just a little bit of willingness to like let that happen. It took over, and I'm not faced with the same problems, right? I'm on a different basis of life, right? My dependency and my satisfaction comes from the source that is not materialistic, right? And it's like, it's an action though, right? It doesn't just like automatically happen. Like I have to seek it out, because so easy do I fall back into these ruts of, I just want more clothes. Right, I just want to spend more money. I just want to go on, I want to just go on more trips. I want to try to live by self-propulsion. I want to try to get myself from point A to point B. I don't want to let God take me there. I want to get there myself. And as soon as I do that, do I find myself depending on things that have historically failed me in getting any satisfaction out of life, that have led me towards, not filling my cup, right? Of just like trying to do anything to not have to try to escape this feeling that I have. It's weird. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? When I try to do something to like make myself feel better, I make myself feel worse. Instead of just letting this thing that I found do the work, take the reins. I'm way more fine every single time I do that, right? Every time I just lay back and just like, you know what? I'm gonna let God handle this, or I'm gonna try to do what he would have me do. As soon as I do that, then everything else just falls into place. So, yeah.
It's crazy, man. That's so good, man. Dude, I love talking about that. Because it's crazy, man. Like, even though, right, it doesn't matter. Like, even though I know what the solution is, what the source is, I still fall victim to my humanity.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what it is, right? Like, I think that I can fix myself. Even though my experience has shown me otherwise, right? And like, it doesn't matter how many, it doesn't matter that how aware I am of that solution. Like, I still fall back, and I still fall victim to that,
And it's we're ingrained with it, right? Like how long do we live our life during our like developmental years, right? Like if you're sad, you get a lollipop. You know what I mean? Like we have these ideas and these things that are part of our humanity. They've been ingrained in us that it's like to rework that or to get back or try to find a spiritual basis without being anchored in it. Like that's a long road, right? Like some of the things that we were promised like in the book or through spirituality, they were given at once, right? And that's great. You know what I mean? It's a blessed thing that it is. But like some of these things are also like of an educational variety. It can take a really long time. I spent like 10 years running and gunning. And even before that, because I had the problem, well, before I even started getting loaded, right, I had a problem with living life on life's terms. I was always trying to make myself feel better by external measures, right? I've got a long time to rework my brain to like look inward, right? Be intrinsic in thought and not think about what I can get out of this world, but what I can give to it, right? It doesn't come naturally. It doesn't, at least not to me. For some people it does, right? But that's just not my experience, right?
So what is your practices right now on like obtaining that awareness? You know? I guess
So I think the biggest things, man, is like, like I pray in the morning and at night. I try to employ my faculties with like, like quickly, without hesitation, right? If I'm in fit spiritual condition and I pray and I'm meditating and I'm trying to anchor myself in that higher power, then I can go throughout my day and I don't have to second guess doing things, right? Like, if if I get an idea of doing something and and I'm indecisive, I think like, okay, is this helping or hurting? Is it selfish or non-selfish, right? I just try to like run it through that process and then like just do it. Not think about it, just do it, right? Don't think about, if it costs something. Don't think about, if it's going to take time away from the things that I want to do, right? I try to just do for others in any capacity that I can. And just stick to it, right? It comes unnaturally. I don't really know what it looks like. But when I pray and I meditate, right, I have confidence that I can go throughout my life and make decisions and kind of like have intuitive thought, right? Like I don't have to plan it out. I don't have to like go back and forth. I don't necessarily feel like I have to try super hard to do anything because God allows me to do all the things that I can't do for myself anyway, right? Like He is an active part in my life, right? And so like, one of the gifts of this program and one of the gifts of like having a spiritual basis, right, is like, this world and these people around me really used to dominate me, right? Like used to really like rub me the wrong way constantly. I was always at odds or at ends with other people, places, and things, right? But to like be gifted like compassion or like this idea that like this person that cut me off in traffic or this coworker at work who I don't really know that well, but I have an opportunity to like pray for them, and like if maybe they have wronged me or they've come into my life in a way that's unexpected, right? I can think like, man, I hope they can get through whatever they're going through, right? Like, what a blessing, what a paradigm shift, man. That's like to be one with people around me, like that connectedness that just was lost on me for so long.
Yeah. So
you know
what
what I
did
mean?
it look like before it? Can you give me some examples?
Yeah, man. So like, I think everybody had fair weather friends.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that as early as like, as high school. Probably even before then, probably like middle school, right? I always just had friends. Like, I moved around a lot. I didn't, go to the same school. I didn't have like one group of friends or grow up in the same neighborhood. So I always felt different than the people around me, right? I spent a lot of time in isolation. I was an only child, and my mom was single, so she worked a lot and went to school. So I spent a lot of time in isolation and just in my own head, right? And so, people or other people, I didn't have an idea of what was going through other people's heads. They're just totally selfish and self-centered, right? Like at my core, and almost like at no fault of my own. That's just kind of how my experience was growing up. I didn't think about how my actions affected others, right? And so like, there's all kinds of stuff. Like, I don't even know if it's like behavioral issues or what you call it, but I remember just always thinking that like I was the most important thing. At least to me. I guess it's kind of messed up. I didn't care about a lot of other things or people. Like there was a certain sense of like apathy for the world around me because I was just trying to deal with my own emotions, right? I was trying I was just trying to cope, and so other people that felt like an offense on me, right? Like other people just living their lives or doing whatever it is that they're doing, like that felt like an offense on me if it made me feel some type of way, right? And it was just take it. And then when I found myself able to like utilize that apathy as a tool for like meeting the needs that I had, whether it's in my addiction, whether it's meeting needs that I feel like I need in a relationship with people, right? Like using people not just for like financial gains or anything like that, but emotional gains, holding people emotionally hostage. When I found I could utilize this kind of apathy to get there, it became a whole different beast, right? Like I was just not. It was it's like dangerous. It was scary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a a lot of people.
You didn't even think you'd get to that place.
No, I never thought that I could look across from somebody that I told myself I loved and that I told I loved and intentionally hurt them, right? Knowing that it was means to an end. Knowing that there was something I needed to get from that person that I was going to get regardless of how they felt about it, right? And it mostly showed its way in like my relationships, right? Like I've never had healthy relationships until, I got sober, right? I didn't know what that looked like. Had no conceptual idea of what a healthy relationship looked like. And I didn't have a healthy relationship with myself, And so that was that's a very scary place to be. You make a lot of mistakes, you do a lot of things that you regret. And you just try to take like ownership of those things, right? Like like I said, I would be willing to do anything to not. I think it all plays a part. I would do anything to not have to live in that place and be that, be in that place again. And luckily, the result, it's a really sweet deal. It's a really good deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When the alternative is what my life looked like before I got sober, which is crime, homelessness, isolation, hurting anybody that did get close to me, right? Like when that's the alternative, everything that I do today to like help stay sober and find a spiritual basis, I would do it 10 times over.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can relate to this. If you could bottle the feeling that you have now, like if you could like accurately describe it and go tell your 18, 19, 20-year-old self and have them actually understand it, right? Or even with like another person who's struggling and trying to get sober, right? If you could just tell them like, this is what it feels like, this is what you get, and this is all you have to do, right? You could accurately convey that, like, man, I would have done it 10 times over. I would have done my steps 10 times. I would have prayed 10 times a day. I would have done it and without question.
And that's what like we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like not one person lacks access to the thing that will set them free.
No.
They just lack awareness.
Yes.
That's our job. Is to spread the awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like if there was a way to just bottle it up and just fucking throw it at people so
like
they
you
can
got
feel,
it. Yes.
right? And so we have to, that's why I believe I have to continue spreading the message. I have to, like, I just feel like I'm called to do that.
Yeah.
You know? And like, if I could just told my younger self that, or made him feel that.
But that ties us back to our satisfaction out of life thing, right?
Yeah.
Because the thing I get satisfaction out of now today, the highlights of my life are when either I've done something for someone else, or I can see or when I've spread the message.
Yeah.
When I can sit down with somebody and we're talking about this thing and we're finding a spiritual basis, like that whole thing about compassion for other people, right?
Yeah.
I have a peer of mine. We're talking about, the steps. We're talking about recovery. We're talking about, we get onto this idea of like resentments, making amends and stuff like that, right? And he tells me about a friend of his that passed away. And he passed away while they had a grudge, right? Like he overdosed, and he had a grudge against him.
Yeah.
Not that he had done anything to him,
Right.
but in his heart, he had a grudge against this person, right? And to see this person who is so early in life, early in this whole thing of recovery, right? Early in their development, in their spiritual development, right? And they have an earnest kind of like, it's like, yeah, he did me wrong, but I didn't want him to suffer. He was probably really going through it to have put himself in that position.
Yeah.
To hear, to see that happen for somebody else, to have that human element, that comeback, that spiritual compassion, I was just like, that's lost on people, that are 3 times his age, right? And have everything in the world that they could dream of, right? And this, this young person that is essentially rebuilding their lives, and to have such a human and raw, compassionate experience. And to know how kind of good that feels, how relieving, how promising that is for our outlook on our future and things like that. That's what I get satisfaction out of today, right? I get a satisfaction out of the person I am, not the things that I get. It's not about what I get out of life. It's about who I am when I walk into a room, standing up tall, looking people in the eye, happening to people in a good, positive way. That's my satisfaction now. And that's what it ties into. And it mostly comes from carrying the message. It allows me to do everything else that I do, right? It's a really beautiful thing, man.
Man, that is so good, man. This is going pretty good. Dude, I just love this, bro. I'm obsessed with the growth. I'm obsessed with it, and what has been your experience? If you would like to go more in depth, or if you could go more in depth and with spreading the message, like the sponsorship. How has your experience been being sponsored and sponsoring other people? Or spreading the message.
Absolutely. So the message, it's first started, and it's I remember the first time, or I don't even remember if it was the first time I heard the message, but I remember being at a treatment facility and experiencing an H&I for the first time.
Yeah.
Where
was that?
It was TLC.
Oh, okay.
TLC off I think it's McDowell, the one over in Phoenix.
I've never been there.
Yeah, they have multiple campuses. It was the Phoenix one. I think it's 24th Street in McDowell, or maybe further south. But I remember. I think I was 19 or 20.
Oh damn.
Yeah, I was 19 or 20, and I'm there, and I was just trying to not be homeless, just trying to figure out what to do in my life. Right, I end up there, and I just remember this guy. I remember what he looks like. I don't remember his name, but I remember him telling a story about his experience on the streets, right? And his experience with drugs and getting sober. And he had a smile on his face, right? And he was, and I was still, I was still coming out of psychosis, man. For anybody that knows, if you've been out there on the streets and up for days and doing what you do, it kind of, it lingers. And when you get back into normal life, you're trying to think, you have these thoughts that run through your head, and it happens almost. It's very strange, right? Let's just call it that. I genuinely thought, I'm like, man, this motherfucker, he's been following me with a camera. I was like, how does he know I did that? Right? Like, I had my first experience thinking like, oh, I'm not alone in my experience with drugs and alcohol. Right? Because I didn't talk about it with anybody. When it got bad, I wasn't talking about my emotions. I wasn't talking about the things I was doing to have to survive or what my experience was. It was a lot of trauma and a lot of stuff I started to compartmentalize early on, right? And so that was my first experience hearing the message. The guy came in, he said, hey, I'm like you, and I don't have to be anymore, right? You also don't have to be. And it just planted a seed. That was the mustard seed for me. Because there was years more of suffering and research I had to do, but I still remember to this day, right? Like how impactful that moment really was for me. And so that was like my first experience hearing the message, right? And then I don't remember why I chose my very first sponsor, but I chose him, and I think it's because he was a house manager at one of the sober livings I was. He was at another one of the houses, right? And I thought, oh, okay, well, he's probably got some, he's got mentorship type vibes, right? Like that's all I was looking for. I was like, he's a nice guy, let's just give it a shot. And he's in the community, so I feel like I could trust him, and whatever the case is, right? Get through step 4, and again, a lot of my bouts with early sobriety, I wasn't really working on the God idea or the higher power idea. That was not, I thought I could run my own program, right? And so I took what he said and left what I didn't like, and so I went back out, and there was a time where I was out for about, I think, a year or 2 years, something like that, and at varying levels of success, right? Like I wasn't always homeless. I maintained a job throughout most of it, varying degrees of success, but I was spiritually bankrupt and I was miserable the whole time, and then I come back, I go and get sober, I go to a rehab, and then I come back, I end up right back at the same network of sober livings, right? And that guy is still there. The guy I asked to be my first sponsor, he's still there. He's still a manager. And I go to one of the meetings where it's like all the houses kind of meet, right? It's a backyard meeting. And he sees me and immediately recognizes me, and he walks up to me, he's like, oh man, I'm so glad you're back. Like, I'm glad you made it. Like, I'm glad you're alive. And gives me a hug. And I was just like, immediately washed over with like emotion. I was like, wow. I was like, I was remembered. I was loved. Right? Like I was cared about. Even when I was off doing whatever it is. Yeah, right? Even when I was off like messing up my life and making, decisions that I thought, were shameful, right? A lot of shameful acts. There was not one semblance of, oh man, what were you doing? Why did you leave? It was just like, oh man, I'm so glad that you're back. Right? And that really, that really hit me. Yeah. I felt like humility and gratitude and all these things in that moment of that experience of like, oh wow, and I felt almost a sense of responsibility from that experience too, right? I felt like, oh man, like people care about me. Like I should try to do something to care about myself too. Like I should try to show up for myself so I can show up for these people that I feel genuinely care about me. Nobody wants to hear about a friend or somebody that they know passed away, right? Maybe I can contribute to not being one of those people, And so we end up working the steps again. I get through them, and then I meet my sponsor. He was on this. He was a part of this as well. And my nosy ass, we worked together, right? So my nosy ass, I'm walking by his desk, and he gets a call from Crossroads, and I see it light up on his phone. Crossroads. I was like, Crossroads. That's a rehab. That's a rehab I dropped out of. It's like, what is he getting a phone call from him, right? And so I walk by whatever, he goes and takes the call, he comes back, and I kind of lean back in my chair. I'm like, hey, man, you a sponsor? And he's like, yeah, bro, how these all lit? I was like, yeah, bro, how'd you know? Are you in recovery? I'm like, yeah, I think I had like 90 days or something. And he's like, oh man, that's great. You should come with me to this H&I. You should come with me to this meeting. And my sponsor at the time, he says, hey, guess what? You're going to be doing that every Saturday until I tell you not to. And I was like, okay, I guess. And I think he didn't say it like that. He said, do it for a year.
Yeah.
Right? He said, just go every Saturday that you can for a year and see if your life changes. And I was like, all right, cool. So I start going. It's where I meet, a core group of my fellowship, and I end up asking him to be my sponsor as well. And I work the steps again, and then now that Saturday night meeting, that's like, I'm like a core element of that. That's where I've gotten all my sponsees. So sponsorship and sharing the message, right? It like kind of ushered me into this way of life that has now primed me to get the same satisfaction out of it, right? Like it's serendipitous, man. Like, how was I supposed to know that I was going to meet the guy that I would trust with my life at at an office job? Like, we would connect I don't know if I've worked with too many people in recovery, at least openly talk about recovery, and let alone get invited to a meeting that was, at that time, I think maybe 5 or 10 minutes away from where I lived, right? And like, it was a no-brainer. And then that's where I start my experience with sponsoring too, right? Like, I didn't sponsor guys right after I got sober against my sponsor's suggestion. I felt inadequate. I felt inept. I didn't feel like I knew enough to actually help anybody. A lot of insecurity. I just didn't want to look stupid. And I also thought at the time, and there's a lot of ego, I thought I was responsible for helping other people stay sober, because I felt so indebted to my sponsor for how he helped me, right? Meanwhile, all along, he'll tell you himself he didn't do anything, right? There's powers that lie outside of synthetic knowledge at work there. It had nothing to do with what he sat down and tried to say to me. It was all God, right? Like, God spoke through him. And so I worked the steps again, and then I start sponsoring. And my experience has been, it's just been what it is, man. I don't have any long-term sponsees. I get to meet with one today, right? I get most of them from this rehab facility that I go to, and it's a short-term treatment center. And so, I get through as much as I can with them. And then after that, they have to make the decision of whether or not they want to continue on this path, right? Yeah. And thankfully, I'm not in the results business, right? If the way I look at it is that when I go to these H&Is and I speak for my little 5-10 minutes, or when I sit down with a guy and we just read a little bit of the book, I like to think that I'm that first guy that came to TLC for me sometimes. I may not be the guy like my sponsor who carries the torch, right? Who's like, it's been with me for years and years and years, and that's the guy I call my sponsor, right? Maybe that's not my role. I'm just trying to play the role I'm assigned. Maybe I'm just the guy who says something that just plants the one seed in the guy that will hopefully get sober years from now, right? I don't have to be the guy that has 10 guys that call him every day and, that have years of sobriety and all this and that. That's not why we do it. Right, that's not why we do it. And part of carrying the message of sponsorship for me is like, I like to be in the trenches, right? Because my life is so great today that it would be easy to forget that I used to eat out of Panda Express dumpsters. You know what I mean? Like, that I really used to be on a grimy level of life. And because today it's like I said, it's so removed from those things, and so but the further away I get from the reminder that I have an illness, right? That I am to a couple of wrong decisions, right? From turning my back on my higher power and deciding to take my will back, that'll put me right back there, without a doubt. And that's best case scenario. That's they don't get incarcerated or institutionalized or die. I've got plenty of evidence to support that. So when I go to I'm super thankful to be allowed to go to these places, welcomed by the staff there, welcomed by the program, to go and, share my experience and hear these guys out, right? They help me more than I help them at points, right? And what a blessing that is. I do everything I can for them, right? And in turn, all they have to do is just share with me a little bit of that experience with them, that first step experience, to get reminded of what it's like to be right there, kicking 3 or 4 days sober, not sleeping right, just it really helps ground me and remind me that because they're looking for help, right? And then when I think about my powerlessness, really the powerlessness I have over helping them, that reminds me of my powerlessness to help myself out of that too, right?
Yeah.
Because my goal is I'm trying to get them to God, right? And so that reminds me, it's like, oh, okay, well, if I can't do anything for them, right, then I know damn well I can't do it for myself. So I got to keep turning it over to God. I got to keep inviting this thing into my life that is truly the solution, right? And that's what I think that's really the key element of what keeps me sober today are these reminders and going to work with these newcomers and really just get back to basics. I'll work the fundamentals. I cannot tell you how many times I've read Doctor's Opinion and Bill's Story, right? And those are the parts of the book that really speak to me. They talk about the medical estimate of my disorder, and they talk about the experience of a man who almost 100 years ago was living the exact same life that I lived, just with different faces in a different location, but the exact same experience. I'm like, that's ratifying for me. I never thought a book would save my life. Never thought a book would save my life. I wasn't a Bible thumper. I didn't have any spiritual experience or spiritual axiom growing up or anything like that. And so it was just like, it didn't make sense to me, right? But now it's an undeniable fact. It's a truth in my life that this book, this program, and God are responsible for every positive thing I have in my life, bar none. There's nothing that I can't look at God and be like, you're responsible for that, So it's a beautiful thing, man.
Man, that is great, man. That is so beautiful. Like, I don't know. It's just like there's a lot of things that you said, man, that really like stood out to me. But yeah, like that sense of, like that sense of responsibility that I have to spread the message. And like luckily for me, I'm like the people around us. They're gonna hold us accountable to continue spreading the message, even when I was scared, even when I felt inadequate, even when I felt like I had to save somebody, right? Like they just pushed me towards that discomfort because they knew that there was growth behind that.
Yeah.
Like I'm robbing myself out of an experience if I don't spread the message.
Yeah.
Because it's such a beautiful experience. It's very humbling. Because when I feel lost in my life, I know that I do have one purpose, and that is to at least spread the message, because I'm, just like we said, like we're uniquely qualified, right? So I'd be robbing myself out of an experience if I don't go out there and give it away, So you've pointed out a couple of hints of like how great your life is now. So how does it look like, man? How's your life look like today? Your relationships, right? Like relationship with God, like everything.
Yeah. I just saw my mom yesterday, and we were kind of going through the same thing, right? Like I had a great relationship with both of my parents. That was something that was certainly tested all throughout my sobriety and even in my early life. I was not the best kid and continue to make poor decisions into young adulthood. But now it's like I show up for my mom, like I get to be there if she needs help doing something in the backyard. I show up for my grandparents whenever there's a celebration at the house, all kinds of stuff. So like the family aspect, it's like I am now a contributing member to my family. And I never thought that I could do that, right? I thought they didn't trust me. I thought it would be years before anything could kind of smooth out. And it just wasn't true, right? I just show up and I don't even think about it, right? Oh, there's a dinner there on the 17th. I'm there. Bottom line, I would drop everything else. And the reward from that is, I get to create new memories and kind of mend those wounds from not being there for so many years, right? So the family life is great, man. My relationships, I'm in a relationship and she's a wonderful person. And, I get to talk about I don't know, it's not, she's like a normie, right? But my life is not detached from hers in that way, right? Because it's all one and the same. I don't have my work life and my AA life. I don't have my love life and my AA life, right? Like I have a life that's contingent on my spiritual maintenance, that's, contingent upon God, right? And so it all kind of blends together and we talk about these things. And so, I'm also learning how to have healthy relationships too, because I stayed in an unhealthy relationship for years into my sobriety. It was with the person that I was with before I got sober. And we were together, almost 4 years. And so there's a lot to learn there, right? There's a lot to unpack, but essentially with that, man, is that I just found that any area I don't invite God into my life, I can still suffer in. And it's funny because I remember like we were talking about that, like feeling lost, right? Like after my previous significant other and I split, I remember that feeling, like I was lost. Like, what am I gonna do? I'm in this place that I got with her, right? I'm now alone. I don't know what to do. I've never been alone. I've maybe in my adult life since I'm 18 have maybe spent a collective 4 months single. Yeah. 4 or 5 months single in my life. Yeah, it's all bad. But in any case, right, like I don't know what to do with myself, right? And I just remember diving super heavy into prayer and meditation, right? And then what happened is I was going to more meetings, more H&Is. I picked up more sponsees, right? I was nudged by these men in my life. I had more men surrounding me in my life that were compassionate and there to support me than I'd ever had in my life, dude. Talk about relationships. My friendships are the most important thing I have. Yeah. Bar my relationship with God, my relationship with the men around me, it's unparalleled. Yeah. Most of them are in recovery. Even the ones that are wonderful people, right? That God has brought into my life that I get to be of service to, right? And it's reciprocated, and it's like I feel a part of. I feel a part of something bigger than myself. Even outside of AA, right? Like that's the foundation, that's the principles, that's all good and great. But this circle of men that I can call and I can trust and I can depend on and be depended on, to be a dependable man, to be trustworthy and stand up, like that satisfaction out of life, that's unparalleled, right? Yeah. And so when I'm at this lowest point I'm at and I'm trying my hardest to just like separate myself from something that could have, that was threatening my security, it was threatening my freedom, it was threatening, it was very, very dangerous for me to continue being in that situation, but not knowing how to fully separate from it. I was just surrounded and then I was given the solution as soon as I asked, right? And so you're right, like that, robbing myself of that experience, right? It was, and I remember at that time, right, I just remember praying, I'm like, I was looking over my, my relationship ideals. I was looking over that, my first one, back what I did in September of 2021. And I'm like, it's like, I'm just going to trust in you, God. I'm going to put this in your hands. Like, I'm feeling this pain. I'm feeling this kind of, but I trust that your plan for me is better than the plan I have for myself, I ask to receive whatever it is that you would have for me, even if that means going and making it right with the other one, right? I'm willing to do whatever your will is for me, because if I take my will back and I try to mend myself, I'm going to make it worse, almost undoubtedly, right? And sure enough, I get blessed with this beautiful person that gets brought into my life seamlessly, super simple, super easy. But then God he put a little asterisk, right? And he's like, but you're also gonna have to work on all the stuff that you still had, right? You don't get to skip the part. You don't get to skip the grief. You don't get to skip the emotional displacement. You don't get to skip the growing and the uncomfortability and kind of processing that trauma. You just now get to do that while also fostering something else, right? And I was like, all right. And thankfully, I have somebody who's just beautifully emotionally intelligent and has been supported through every step of the way and is so radically different than anything I've known to even be desired in a relationship. And so, that's a beautiful part of my life. And then as far as all the other stuff, man, my job is great. I've got a boss that I love working for, and it's, like I said, I used to sleep outside. You know what I mean? And now I help manage over $100,000 in payroll a month. Every 2 weeks, I help manage over $100,000 of payroll. They trust me to do that, to make sure that these guys are getting paid properly, right? Are you sure you guys want me to do this? You know what I mean? But I have a sense of confidence, right? I show up and I'm dependable and I take pride in my work. I put, energy into that, right? I don't want to be just okay. And not even because I want recognition or not because I just want to make more money, right? I do it because that's what I agreed to do. Right. I gave this company and these people, I gave them my word that I would show up and I would do my utmost best, and so I do. Right. And the result is I have a job that allows me to pay all my bills. I've got a car with 4 wheels. I get to go on trips and, buy things for my grandparents for their birthdays. I can do all that stuff. Right. The money or the job that I have today is truly just a vessel for me to be of more service to the people around me, whether I'm at work, the people I interact with there, or it's I use those things to support myself so that I can then give to others, right?
Yeah.
Like that's really how it breaks down. And then outside of that, I like to play video games. So I got a little PC set up, I like to watch shows with my girl. Like, it's super simple. There's nothing super extravagant about my life, I would say, but it feels so full.
Yeah.
God,
that is so good.
It doesn't have to be, I'm not on yachts. I'm not taking trips every other week.
Yeah.
I go to work, I go to my meetings, and I spend time with the people that are important to me, and then I indulge in some of my hobbies, and that's it. And what more could I need? I was talking about it with a friend of mine last night. I was like, what if you could wake up tomorrow and only want what you needed? Right? Think about how you'd be so centered. You'd have this fullness out of just the things, because God provides everything that I need and then some already. So if I could wake up tomorrow and not think about, having this car or buying these clothes or this jewelry or looking at that girl, right? Like if I could just be want the things that I need, you can't even imagine what that would be like, right?
Yeah.
I feel it sometimes, little glimpses, right? I feel that we're just like, I have everything that this world has to offer right here, available to me right now. And, but it's, like I said, man, it's just beautiful. I couldn't imagine the life that I live today. I just wouldn't have been able to put it together. I didn't even know the things I have in my life were things to be desired.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was capable of achieving any of these things prior. I'd always thought, I had an idea. I was told, it's like, oh, you're so capable. You have so much potential.
Yeah.
Why are you wasting your life? And I've just thought, this is what my life is amounted to. This is the only way I can live life to what I felt like was successfully, right? Which was to numb my consciousness. That's the only way I can get by, right? Like, I'm doing the best I can, trust me. And that was true at that time. I really, truly was, right? I was up against something that was more powerful than me. I was picking a fight with something that had me pinned down, had me dead to rights, and it wasn't until I got some help from a higher power, from, these resources, and then getting myself in touch with a higher power that, now it's like my potential is unlimited. I can do anything through God, right? Whatever God wants me to do, I'll be doing it. Sometimes whether I want to or not, right? And so that's really what it's about today, man. As I show up, I've got beautiful friends and men surrounding me. My family is full and healthy and whole, and the peripherals of my life, as far as like the hobbies or the work life, it all is wrapped up in this beautiful package. Everything is just kind of just put together, man. There's nothing that stands out as like, I don't know, nothing that stands out as like a weak point in my life. Right? Like it's all on point, man.
Dude, that is beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That really is, man. Like the beauty and simplicity, right? With the power of God. Because there's not a more comfortable place to be in when you're trusting in God.
Absolutely.
Right? There's not a peace, like, that's my most peaceful place, is when I'm trusting in God and when I'm in the present, when I'm just enjoying that. I'm just in gratitude, and it's such a beautiful thing, man. What is like, so what's been like your challenges in sobriety?
My challenges in sobriety, man. Well, I would say,
overall,
yeah.
Not just in sobriety, but
Well, it's kind of one and the same, right? Like if I'm struggling in my sobriety, it usually has something to do with, that lack of God. And I like what you said, man, that serenity, like that's how I define serenity, right? Like when God has brought me to this place, I perform God's will, and I just feel carried for the rest of those days. Those days where you wake up and you're just like in service for like the entire day, and then all of a sudden you get home, you sit on your couch, and you're just like, wow. Like that was a great day.
Exactly.
You do your nightly and you're just like, man, like when you're who did I help today, and it's just like boom, 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 boom. You're like, wow, and I feel great. Like that is.
That's what I'm here for, man. I'm here to please God and serve.
Yes.
Like that's what's really my purpose, and I'm so glad that at this age we get to experience that.
Yeah.
And we
absolutely.
We're aware that the answers are within us, right? Within God. It's just it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it's a cathartic experience too. Like the trauma and experiences that I think a lot of us have had, for that to be mended and for us to be like able to give back, to overcome these kind of adversities, right? There's a lot of testimony in that. A lot of people have experienced a lot of things in, you know, as a result of their drinking and drugging, right? But then to rise above that, or to be placed in a position of either neutrality towards it, like that, like it's cathartic. It's almost like therapy. When I get to help somebody and God calls me to help somebody and I answer that call, it's almost like I've then gotten closer to dealing with whatever it is I may be going through, right? And even talk about challenges, man. Like there's a lot of, you know, I think a lot of challenges that I've had or have experienced, they usually, they've existed in the realm of my relationships, right? Like, you know, I'm trying to think back, you know, for a while it was a matter of just feeling kind of inadequate, right? A little bit of imposter syndrome. Who am I? Right? Who am I to have been given all these things? Or who am I to have, you know, been saved? You know, a lot of like survivor's guilt, stuff like that. That was kind of earlier on. And then working with my sponsor, he just helped me show it's like, well, God didn't save you so you can do whatever you want. Like let's be clear about that. Like it talks about in the book, right? Usually there's like you have a problem, a solution, and a contingency. That's how the book is structured for a lot of it, right? So it introduces a problem, like, okay, you may have this problem, or as an alcoholic, we share this common peril, right? Here is the solution, as outlined for what we do. This was what will happen as a result of this solution, but this is what you have to do, right? It's not just like you read about it and then it's just all gone. Like there's usually some rules of engagement, right? And when I find myself deviating from those rules of engagement, that's when problems enter my life, right? And so at first, you know, it was problems with my relationships. There's a lot of back and forth. It was a lot of me taking my will, but a lot of it, you know, was rooted in dishonesty with myself, right? Not respecting boundaries, not bringing God into that situation, right? And so as a result, years into sobriety, I'm still dealing with the same emotions. It felt like I was getting loaded. I'm filled with so much anger. Right? And maybe not deep-rooted resentment. I'm responding to it differently, right? Like I see the red flags coming up. I know I've got to call my sponsor. I know I've got to pray it away. But that feeling is so deep-rooted, right? That pain. And, you know, it was pain that was more or less brought upon myself. You know, all my problems were of my own making, you know? And so I think a lot of it is rooted in the challenges that I face has been a lot of insecurity, lack of boundaries for myself, learning how to love and respect myself, right? Even though I do esteemable acts, having lack of self-esteem, that imposter syndrome, just not having any merit to the thing I do, subjecting myself to these kinds of things that you don't have to go through, man. Right. I didn't have to put myself through those things, but learning and navigating healthy relationships and a relationship with yourself as well as a relationship with God, like it's a whole lot to deal with, right? And there's outside factors at play too. You know, there's because we still live life on life's terms. It says in that scenario, you know, hereafter in this drama of life. It's gonna be a drama. Right? It doesn't say hereafter in this comedy, right? Hereafter in this soap opera. It's drama, right? And so life brings things to me, but as much as I'm willing to depend and trust in my infinite God, am I able to match calamity with serenity? Right? That chaos, it was relatively short-lived, right? They're kind of like blips on the radar, you know? So I would say my biggest struggle, man, has just been like relationships, you know, relationships with women and just not inviting God into the situation and trying again to, you know, now that it's not drugs, now that I understand it's not money or materialistic, there's still certain satisfactions you can get out of a significant other that can be taken past its intended purpose, right? And that's a character defect, right? When I wake up in the morning and say, I'm not going to do this thing, and still do it anyway, that's a character defect, right? That's not bad behavior. I didn't want to hurt this girl. I didn't want this girl to hurt me, but why do we keep doing it? It's like, okay, because I'm unwilling to do God's will. Right? I've taken it back, and as a result, something's got to give. The pain of it continuing is going to become, the pain of continuing is going to become greater than the pain of stopping, right? And that's eventually what happened in that regard. But I just remember praying away, just like please take this away from me, right? At the 7-step prayer, just take away this character defect, you know, that blocks me off from my usefulness to you and my peers. And sometimes it's subtle, right? It doesn't feel like I'm not being honest. It doesn't feel like I'm not, it doesn't feel like I'm taking away from my peers. But when I can't be like intentional with my actions or my mind, or I'm preoccupied, or I'm constantly on the phone while I'm at work, going back and forth, like I'm taking away from the people around me in very subtle ways. Like I'm certainly not the best me. I'm not doing God's will because I'm worried about me, myself, and I. I've placed this thing in such a high level of importance. I'm putting my relationship before God. I'm putting how this girl feels or what she thinks about me, right? Or what she does. I'm putting that up front of God's plans. Like, I don't care what God has for me. This cannot happen. This is not okay, right? And that's a scary place to be, at least for someone like me. And because it could easily take me out. Man, if I stubbed my toe, I was getting high. Like any minor inconvenience, right? Anything I felt like I couldn't deal with or cope with, man, like I was fully willing to like mess my life up even more. So in sobriety, when I'm faced with a very real world problem, right? Like, infidelity, your partner cheating on you, or whatever the case is, like some people would say that's a perfectly good reason to go have a drink.
Yeah.
At least for a normie, right? I used to put myself in toxic or unhealthy relationships knowing the girl would do me dirty so that I'd have an excuse. Yep. And and so when I'm sitting there and I'm using I'm using it as a mask, right? I'm not really, like, I might be sad. But really what I want is an excuse to dive deeper into my addiction, to get pulled down deeper into this thing that already has a hold on me, and I don't want eyes around me. I don't want to be held accountable, right? I want like a guard up. Like, oh, if you have my problems, you would use like I use, right? And so, so dealing with that is just, it's a whole other thing, man. But, it's, the answer was there all along for me in that regard, right? Like I said before, the relationships with the men around me, having strong relationships with men for the first time in my life is what really helped pull me out of it, right? They were able to objectively sit me down, and I knew that they cared, right? I knew that they were trying to like push some kind of idea onto me. It wasn't like, it was just truly out of love and compassion. They said, like, Trenton, you can't allow these things to happen. You know that, right? I was like, like, we care about you. Like, you're loved. Like, and not to say like, oh, there's plenty more love out there for you, but it's like, you've got to do something. It's not okay for you to be treated that way. Right? And that was just something I was just like, oh, you're telling me I don't just have to tank that? Because that's really what you kind of get used to in addiction, and also kind of in recovery, right? You kind of get used to just like taking things as they are, right? But I take it past my intended purpose, right? I become complacent, right? Not taking action is an action,
Exactly,
And so when I'm allowing these things to come into my life that are not in my relationship ideal, they're not loving, they're not part of God's plan for me. As far as I understand it, when I pray and I meditate and I bring it to God, I know that God doesn't want me to be in pain and suffer unnecessarily, for the sake or ends, or for the, to placate others. I don't necessarily have to suffer, right? But I still choose to do it anyway and allow it, like, okay, well, then that's on me, man. So it's taking responsibility for that and showing up. Like, that was probably the biggest challenge that I've faced, in sobriety. And then, like I said, and then the answer came at once, right? Like, it was a little bit of pain at first, it was a little jarring, but then to just dive into more service work, right? I didn't understand the connection there, but I was just busy. I spent a lot less nights lonely, right? I was out. I had friends in recovery come over to my place, just playing video games, listening to music, chopping it up, I had another brother who was on this cast as well, and he was coming over like 3 or 4 nights a week. We would just listen to music and chop it up, and I didn't feel alone once. I did not feel lonely, even though I'd had my pets, one of my pets taken, and this person who was like a part of my life, like a very integral part of my life, not there anymore. I still felt, close. I felt closer to God, and I felt like I had more people in my life than I ever had. And so, the solution was there. It was not a better time in my life for me to go through that growth or that experience. There's a plan for me out there. And I'm, pretty happy with the result as it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, how can you not be, man? That's such a beautiful thing, man. And thank you for thanks for just expanding on like the struggle behind it as well, right? Because it's not like it is extremely beautiful and profound, the life that we live today, but there's still like that darkness.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like we're going through life. Life isn't gonna stop just because we get sober.
Yeah.
And like I just love how you keep bringing God into this because it's true, right? Like everything is directly correlated to whether I'm spiritually connected or not, right? Like the way I think about myself, the way I treat others, the way I think about others, right? Like everything's directly correlated to whether I'm spiritually connected or not, and that's a couple days of not doing like what not getting close to God, not feeling it, and I'm just distracted in my mind, like it's a mess, right? And so to kind of bring it to a conclusion, man, what's one of the greatest inspirations that you've received or the most recent ones, whether it's something that like somebody told you, something that's just been sticking with you.
Yeah. Well, something that's been sticking with me for a long time is the saying that I used earlier already because of how inspirational it was.
Yeah.
A brother who took me through the steps, it was my third time going through, and I was dealing with a lot of the relationship stuff, right? Like a lot of the back and forth. And one of the things I was hung up on was like, well, if I'm being honest and I'm not hurting anybody, where am I at fault? Why am I going through these things? They must be doing something to me because I'm being honest and I'm being, it's how they're treating me is the issue, right? Essentially, I was, seeing two different people, and although they were aware of the nature of the situation, right, like it was still, there's still chaos there, obviously, right? Because nobody wants to be second to anybody in a relationship, especially if you're engaging with them romantically, right? And so he's, and I'm meeting with him every week, and he's asking me, he's like, oh, so how's this going? He's like, well, I think I'm gonna settle down with this one. And then the next week, she did this, I'm gonna go settle down with the other one. And it's like that for, I can't even remember. It's like that for, I think, like 2 months. Back and forth, turmoil, right? And he just gets to this point where he's like, Trenton, God did not save a wretch like you so you could do whatever the fuck you wanted. Yeah. And like, it just hit me, right? Like, and I was just like, it's like, what do you mean? I'm like, and then it comes with all these other things, right? The inspiration came with like, okay, I need to rely more on God and be honest with myself about what that really means. Because I can live to a chosen ideal. I can say, oh, well, it's okay, right? I can live to that chosen ideal instead of what's actually in the book. Or if I pray and meditate, what God's will is for me actually, because those are two different things, right? I need to pray and I meditate so I can try to tap in and get that knowledge. I need to read texts, right? I need to get some ideas from other spiritual bases to understand what that really means. Whatever my conception of God is, needs to grow. If it's stagnant, or if I can define it and manipulate it, it's not big enough, right? Because I was working in loopholes, right? I was working in loopholes to satisfy this core issue that I have, right? Of insecurity or trying to get what I want out of the situation. I was trying to get myself from point A to point B, which even if that means that if it was just one night just getting laid, then that's what I was doing, right? At the expense of other people, at hurting these two people who had nothing to do with those issues, right? So that's one thing, is that I needed to grow and I needed to enlarge my spiritual conception and be honest with myself about what that really means. Because even though I was being honest and not hurting anybody, that's just not true. Yeah. Even if they tell me that and I allow them to tell me that, and they're saying it for the sake of either protecting themselves or so as to try to continue the relationship, whatever their motives were, I know in my heart of hearts that that's not how someone wants to be treated. So why am I going to allow or be an avenue for someone to subject themselves to something that's not the best they can do or best they can be, right? And then it was, again, this idea of like, I'm living on borrowed time, right? Who am I to be stingy with my time, with my money, with everything I think is mine? It's all been given to me freely, right? Like I have so much more than necessarily what I've like earned. So then who am I to try to like not give to others or just keep for myself, right? Like I'm taking from these two people, or I'm taking from the situation when I have more to give, even if that means I have to sacrifice. Like it's God's money, it's God's time. Who am I to really sit there and think that I have any entitlement to it, or I know what's best to do with it, right? Like I don't. I need to keep turning it over. If I did, I wouldn't be in the situation to begin with. And so I would say that one line is that, you know, I didn't get saved just so I could do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And the result of like these disciplines and these things that I do are like, I get to do a lot of the stuff that I want when I really look at it objectively, right? Like I get to, if I put my mind to it, there's nothing within reason that I can do through God, you know, that God will allow me to do, even if it's just like experiences, like travel, you know, I can just do that. I don't have to like, I might have to plan for it. He's not just going to drop in my lap. I have to work for it, right? But that's like, I get to do the things that are wholesome and true and aligned with God's will, right? Anything that's aligned with God's will, he will allow me to do. Bottom line, you know, I can even do things outside of God's will, but I'm going to pay the price, right? I'm going to get corrected real quick, right? And so, as far as inspiration, that's one of the biggest things, man. And just, you know, and yeah, I get a lot of inspiration from my sponsees, right? From seeing them live through experiences that I think kind of, you don't get jaded, but right, you see a lot of guys come and go. You maybe start to separate yourself from those newcomers, or at least I should say I sometimes have started to separate myself from the newcomers as on the other side of this thing, right? I've got some years, I'm sponsoring guys, like you're at treatment, I come to treatment for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm that dude's bunkie in a heartbeat, dude. Yeah. I don't pray and meditate one day, that could be it. Exactly. You know? And so I get a lot of inspiration from the sponsors and watching them have those like raw emotions and those feelings and those experiences early and on, to see them have that first step experience, to see them go, you know, to be with them for their fifth step and watch them go down the list and then at the end be like, it's like they didn't even do anything. Like to see that, that's inspiring me. That shows me that like you said earlier, that really speaks to me. That's another thing, man, is that I am not unique in any way, shape, or form. I'm not specially gifted. I'm not chosen. You know, I don't have, there's nothing that makes me unique from anyone that's on Mill Avenue sleeping outside right now, struggling with what we're struggling, right? I was given an opportunity. I was blessed, truly graced with this opportunity to be the person I am. I have nothing to do with it, right? It's an experience that can be had to anybody, right? I am garden variety drug addict. I'm not. I didn't finish the 11th grade. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm just more intelligent, right? It's not like I came from a better family. It's nothing, right? It really is. That this experience is available for, you know, unfortunately it's not for anybody that needs it, it's for anybody that wants it, right? And so it's a question you ask yourself, like, do I want to keep living the life that I'm living, right? What can I do? You know, it's out there, the answer is out there. You might have to try multiple times. I tried multiple times to figure it out, right? And thank God I was put in a position where I was like, okay. Just gifted, man. Just give the gift of desperation. And when I reached out and what I thought was a flimsy reed, you know, it was a strong hand of God. It was right there for me. And like I said, I'm a firm believer that anybody can have this experience. And what a beautiful thing that is, right? I'm so glad I didn't fall short of the classifications of being an alcoholic. You know, I couldn't imagine going through life dealing with what I'm dealing with without a solution.
Yeah, right. I used to be pissed, I was, until like I started to realize that. That it's not, like, not everybody gets exposed to these answers as much as we do, right? On a daily basis, we experience change not only within ourselves, but within others as well, as a result of due to these tools, you know, and I'm grateful. Yeah. I'm truly
gratitude is the key.
That I suffer from alcoholism.
Yeah, it's a sweet deal. Yeah. It's a sweet deal. They used to lock us away. They used to lock us up and throw away the key, man. Yeah. You know, and, you know, that's...
No, well, thank you, man. I really, really appreciate you doing this with me. Like, seriously.
Thanks for the invite, dude.
You know, and it's cool, man. Like, I got to know you a little bit. I got to know your story. And it's awesome seeing people like our age, like, hearing the message, knowing the book, sponsoring people, doing the deal right, like, and just spreading hope and spreading awareness.
Yeah, the next generation. I can't wait to be old timers, man.
Yeah.
Sitting in the bag with coffee and a cane.
Seriously, man. And so, I seriously, man, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah. It's glad to be here. This is dope.
Yep.
Super
Yes,
dope.
sir. Yes, sir.
You ever interview yourself?